What's an argument that you lost because the other person was too dumb to understand your logic? My co-worker thinks that police radar guns work by scanning cars to see how hot their engine is. Because the faster you go, the hotter it will be. Right? I tried explaining how Doppler radar works, but she remains convinced that she's correct. Because, and I quote, my husband has one of those radar guns and uses it when he's cooking on the grill. Your husband has an infrared thermometer. You duckin' nut. Ask her how fast a steak travels when her husband grills one. Guy once told me he was speeding on his motorcycle one night in the freezing cold and was almost caught by a police helicopter with an infrared camera. He said he ditched the copter by taking his coat off and cooling his body down to ambient temperature so the infrared camera couldn't see him. I ignored the fact that he'd be dead if his body temp dropped that much and simply asked why they couldn't pick up the heat from the engine. He said infrared cameras only pick up heat from organic sources. At this point I decided against even trying to argue against any of the ridiculous points he was trying to make and just noped right out of the conversation. Was trying to ask my neighbors to shut their dogs up at night because we can't sleep. But my dogs never bark. There they are, barking in the background. SMH and walk away. A guy I used to work with believed that germs were a myth. He thought bad air is what made you sick. We worked in a meat department. Luckily he would wash his hands and keep stuff clean. But his logic was dirty things make bad air. I tried so hard to convince him germs were real. To the point I would print off literature of various educational levels. From kindergarten to college level, and he believed it was all a hoax. It drove me up a wall. He also believed the moon landing was fake. We got in heated arguments over it. To the point my boss put a ban on discussing the moon at all. You should always drive as fast as possible to get the best MPG. Driving twice as fast cuts your travel time in half and cuts your gas usage in half as well. I did not get credit in a game of Trivial Pursuit for my guess of King Tutankhamun. The correct answer was, yep, you guessed it, King Tut. I was like 13 and we had just done an Egypt study in school. So, I was positive about being correct and pretty proud for knowing it. A guy argued that a baby grand piano was for little children during their earliest piano lessons, saying that's why they are called baby grands. I explained that the term baby grand simply refers to the smallest size of a grand piano, about 4 feet 5 inches long. He just insisted that baby grands were for little children, and that's why they are called baby grands. In HS football, the night before a game, we would get together and set goals for the game. They disagreed adamantly and kept the greater than. I was tutoring 4 of them in math at the time. They also hit their goal. More than 200 yards given up. I was trying to explain to my roommates that we can't leave our front door unlocked 24/7, especially when no one is in the apartment and when they are out and I'm sleeping, and that they should replace the keys they lost. Plus we're on a college campus where theft is pretty common and my room was broken into the previous year. We live on a college campus so we're safe. What good is a locked door going to do if someone comes in with a gun? If something happens, that's just life. We went around in circles for 27 minutes. Worst argument ever. Guy said that I could touch a black hole because they only targeted stars and planets. I wanted to die. I was trying so hard not to laugh. True. I have a pet black hole at home. Problem is, every time he's hungry he goes to music festivals. Poor artists. Why it's not cheaper to buy a new $1,200 phone on a 24-month payment plan than to fix a phone that's paid off with a broken screen. $150. They kept insisting that they were entitled to their opinion over something that was a fact. For some reason telling her that her opinion didn't sway the truth just made her double down. Situation. I mentioned that a certain YouTube personality was gay. I said it matter-of-factly. Not to be mean. The guy has mentioned being gay on his channel several times. This girl got mad and girl kept denying he was into dudes. This was despite me pointing out that he openly identified as gay. She cited that it was her opinion to validate the dude's sexuality on what her stupid ass wants to believe. Whenever I use words my mother never heard of and tells me to correct myself, I now have to actually get Google definitions to show her I'm not speaking nonsense. Cause I used to always lose those because she's the mom and older. Therefore she knows more than me. When my friend said that dinosaurs never existed and it was all a conspiracy perpetrated by natural history museums to deny God and make everyone atheists. Well, he worships a really small god. I think the creator of the universe would have a lot of fun with giant lizards. That's a great way to look at it. God made Jurassic Park but then got bored and switched to Westworld. I got into an argument with a guy who swore egg cars were faster. His rationale was because Ferraris are always painted red, which is also not true. At first I thought he was just messing with me. But no. He really believed it and nothing I could say would change his mind. I finally gave up on arguing with stupid and told him how right he was. This was recent. Someone who doesn't run tried to tell me that running on a treadmill doesn't count because you can just lift up your legs and that the track does all the work. I tried to explain that while it isn't 100% the same as running outside, your body wants to stay relative to the moving track, so yes, you are propelling yourself forward. And many outside runners, myself included, run on treadmills at some point for training when the weather isn't cooperating. I'm pretty sure we would be able to tell if we weren't exerting any effort on the treadmill. He said that people who run on treadmills are lazy and we are all wasting our time pretending to work out. Okay buddy. I'm a bartender. When I put a drink up to be run to a table in the restaurant, the servers have to put a garnish on depending on the drink. I see new guy standing there staring at the lemons. Ask him what the deal is and he responds, "These limes aren't ripe yet." Try to explain that's not how that works and guy tells me I don't have to be in a hole. Suffice to say we've lowered our standards for servers lately. I pointed out that his car mirrors were tinted blue. I just thought it was interesting. He got really offended. And when we actually looked at them to prove my point, he said one of the most baffling things I've ever heard: the mirrors are tinted. Reality is, cold air sinks, hot air rises. Other person, but then why does ice float? Last time I needed to call the support, I needed to verify myself. The quite unfriendly sounding lady told me to give her a pin. I told her I never set up a pin. Her answer basically was I shall tell her the pin anyway. That went on around 5 times until I just hung up. Side note 1. You need to verify yourself before that step, which I did via temporary pin in an SMS. Side note 2. She never gave an option to do that or even set up a new pin. She insisted on giving her a pin that does not exist yet. Still a little mad about this one. I was in a marketing class and we had a big project to present why someone should or shouldn't go with a certain marketing strategy. We had group A argue the for side and my group argue the against side. Well, group A went first and they gave every detail of the entire argument, including all of the pros and the cons. They gave every detail, neither making it look good or bad because they gave both sides of the argument. So when we went up and presented only the negatives, we got criticized for looking like we didn't know the full picture. But the whole point was to argue why it wouldn't work. A guy I knew in high school insisted Hawaii was in the Gulf of Mexico because that's what it showed on the map. He even opened our textbook to show and then looked at me like I was an idiot. I just told him to educate everyone he could then. An uncle whose firm and unshakable belief that climate change is a hoax is based on one thing: there was an above average amount of snow in January. What the button for audible signal only does at the crosswalk for pedestrians. My sister is an idiot. Holy shit, I just realized that those buttons aren't made to change the symbol, but to tell you if it's safe to go. My coworker said I'm pro-life. In my house we would never get an abortion, but what other people do is completely up to them. So you're telling me you're pro-choice since you're fine with other people being able to choose? No. I'm pro-life. Right. I will preface this by saying my wife is not dumb. Anyway, I gave up on trying to get her to not use metal stainless utensils in non-stick pans after about the 5th argument about it because she is either too ignorant or too stubborn to not do it. So all of our non-stick pans have a bunch of scratches and gouges in the non-stick coating. Yay. My co-worker believed in the we only use 10% of our brains myth. I tried everything but there was no getting through to him. That pagans don't worship Satan. Blocked him after he said, you know, if you weren't such an ugly heathen I'd duck you. He was 68. I was 15. I tried to explain the weapon's effect to a relative. Explaining that, since he chose to carry a weapon, concealed carrying would be safer than open carrying. They thought I was trying to take their gums and kept asking why it's their fault if other people are nervous. I had just said other people are more likely to act aggressively once they see a weapon. This never clicked. I didn't say this part to them because I never wanted to get shot. But if you show someone you're armed, I would argue it is damn well your fault they've become nervous. How was that even an argument to them? Girl tried to convince me that she would lose her virginity if used tampons. I literally had to teach her the anatomy of the vag uterus and she said that if you retract the poop while taking a sheet, it's self-oral sex. I just wanted to heal myself after that. Played chess with a friend who did not the rules of chess. They believed pawns could heal an opponent by going forward, and that they could also move side to side as long as they are just going one space at a time. Tangentially related, but in K-12 on a number of occasions I got into an argument with someone who would resort to talking at me in Spanish, which I didn't speak, and then end with a triumphant expression, believing they had just won the argument because I couldn't refute their points. Someone was scared of getting a driver license because of the danger involved, so they were going to get a motorcycle license because it was a safer vehicle to operate. I tried telling them it was more dangerous but they weren't having it. Explaining to moon landing denier all the exact science that was needed and used. Best part, we had the technology to land on the moon. We did not have the technology to fake it. A really good buddy of mine is solely convinced dinosaurs didn't exist. He's a smart dude too. Will not come to reason though. How George Bush and Obama can both be scoffed at for how the housing market crash was handled. You know, Democrats and Republicans can both make mistakes, right? Not the last argument, but when I was 18. I had a girl try to tell me that all the bakeries on my country were actually owned by one company that was controlled by the government. I lived in Australia. When I pointed out to her that I was doing a bakery apprenticeship at the time and that my family had been in the industry for more than 3 generations and no less that 6 members of my extended family owned bakeries, she just looked me in the eyes and said, well, I'm sorry to burst your little bubble. I swear I could see the back of her skull through her eyes as the wind whistled gently between her ears. In high school chemistry, during a lab report, I answered a question that asked for mass in terms of mass. The teacher, a football coach, told me my answer should be in terms of density because it wants the mass of the volume. He asked if the material was giving me a headache. I said no. It's you. And he kicked me out of the class. Got in an argument with someone about the true purpose of graphic novels and they kept saying that the story didn't matter, and whenever I gave insight they said I was being stubborn. Yeah dude, I'm supposed to be stubborn when arguing a point I stand by. Neighbor, terrible person, was selling a car. Wanted $700 for it. My friend offered her $600. She got mad. Said let's just split the difference. Give me $350. So he said, sure thing. You win. She never figured out what she did. I tried to convince a flat earther friend that the moon was indeed a sphere that reflects the sun's light. After running logical circles for about 2 hours, I finally got fed up and offered to get my telescope out and show him with his eyes that the moon is a giant rock and doesn't produce light of its own, because his whole argument was you can't see it with your eyes so it's not true. He refused to look through the telescope and claimed I was attacking his religious and personal beliefs for this.